Welcome back to Ozarks Tonight. Well, our usual Friday guest, Steve Pokin of the Springfield News Leader, is joining us today. Steve, good to have you here. It's been a long week. I think everyone across the Ozarks is glad it is Friday. In your capacity with the News Leader, you answer questions that come in from readers.
Right.
And you received a question about a topic that has been in the news from time to time here in the area over the last few years. But the deadline for it is coming up soon. So you tackled the topic of the real ID that some people have, some people do not have. But we're going to dive into that today.
The real ID has been in the news for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And I got a question from a reader, and actually the question came in July. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while I go through my list and I think, did I miss anything? And it kind of caught my eye the second time around, and from a woman named Sarah Jean Peters in Collins in St. Clair County. And she went to the driver's license office in Osceola. She thought she already had a real ID. So I'm going to stop right there because to explain what this is, it's going to take a little bit, and I hopefully can do it concisely and in an entertaining way. Take out your driver's license right now and look in the upper right-hand corner. If there is a star, is it a gold star, brown star?
Yeah, it's a goldish, yellowish star.
Star in the upper right-hand corner. You have a real ID. You have one.
I do have one, yeah.
I don't. So what does that mean? Well, the real ID started with way back the terrorist attacks of 2001. Our federal government wanted to make it more difficult for people to get false documentation, like fake driver's license, you know. So states throughout the nation had to come up with a way to you have to really prove who you are to get a driver's license, a real ID. And you have to present your Social Security card, and you have to present your birth certificate. And that was, Missouri became a holdout over privacy issues. Mm-hmm. Because the Department of Revenue, which manages the Department of Motor Vehicles, wants to scan those. And there were people who said, I don't want it scanned. I don't want them to know my birth certificate or my Social Security card. So there was some pushback. So Missouri became one of the last states to go into compliance. So the terrorist attacks in 2001, the Real ID federal law came out in 2005, and Missouri reached compliance in March 2019. So people have been writing about this a long time. Mm-hmm. We had a former Jefferson City reporter, Will Smith, gone. He's in California. I had to go back and read his articles. I didn't really pay that much attention then, but I became a little bit better versed in it, writing the story that will appear in Sunday. So what's the main thing? If you don't have a real ID, what does that mean? Well, on October 1st of next year, what it looks like it's going to mean is you will not be able to get on an airplane to fly domestically without a real ID. And so, it's optional. You don't need one, but you're not going to be able to fly. Or you're going to have your passport, or a couple of other things, but basically the big one is a passport that could serve as a real ID. Mm-hmm. So you can still go and get a driver's license, and if you don't want the real ID because you don't want them to scan that, it'll actually say this is not a real ID instead of the gold star. And so, the big hang-up is you won't be able to fly or get into other federal facilities such as federal nuclear power plants. Mm-hmm. I don't spend a lot of time in nuclear power plants, but I do occasionally fly. And so what happened with Sarah, she flies a lot, and so she didn't want any of that hassle and anticipation, so she went in 2019, and her license didn't expire until 2020 in July, and she thought she got a real ID, and she brought in her Social Security card, she brought in her birth certificate, and then when her license actually expired, in 2019, she wanted to get a real ID and she wanted to renew her license. You couldn't do both at the same time. So in 2020, she goes in to renew it, and she's got to go through the same thing. Not a huge deal because she had the documents, but she was kind of, I thought I already did this, and I thought that was good for 10 years. What happened? And I've been on the phone, emails with the Department of Revenue. They say the fact that she was asked for it a second time indicates to us she didn't really get a real ID back in 2019. She says she did. At the end of the day, I realized I should have asked her, and I didn't have time to do it. When you got your real ID back in 2000, did it have the star? Because that's the
telltale sign.
The telltale sign, the gold standard of whether or not your ID is good and meets federal requirements. So the bottom line, whatever hassle there is, and you know, different people, it sometimes can be difficult to find your Social Security card or your birth certificate, for that matter. So there is some degree of difficulty, but please keep in mind the ultimate goal is to make identification a little more foolproof so people with evil intent can't pretend to be somebody else and do harm.
And, you know, it's sometimes tough to, I know I have trouble sometimes finding those documents like my birth certificate wherever it might be when I file it away at my home. 'Cause you only pull it out every once in a while, but, you know, it is important. We don't want anybody to be surprised when they go to the airport after October 1st of 2021. So, you know, if you're not sure, just check your ID. Check for the star up in the upper right-hand corner.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So when is the article coming out?
It comes out on Sunday.
Okay, it'll be in the Sunday News Leader. Folks can read it and read through everything, all the documents you need to make sure you have a real ID. Steve, thanks for coming in. We always enjoy having you here in the studio.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll be back with more Ozarks Tonight right after this.